If you ever travel through a small village and hear the locals warn you about a forest, listen to them. Because sometimes a place isn't just dangerous. Sometimes it's waiting. 3 months ago, 5 YouTubers went missing near a village surrounded by an old forest. They were known for exploring abandoned places and debunking local legends. Their last video was supposed to be another simple investigation. But the footage they recorded that night was never meant to be seen. Police later found their camera near the forest trail. The battery was almost dead, but the memory card still worked. What was on that card is the reason the village no longer allows anyone near the forest after sunset. And after watching it, you might understand why. The village of Verkhney Dub was small, barely a few hundred people, old wooden houses, narrow dirt roads, and fields that stretched into the dark wall of trees surrounding the settlement. The forest was ancient. The locals simply called it the Old Forest. Nobody could say exactly how old it was. Some of the trees were so large that 3 people couldn't wrap their arms around them. But the strange thing wasn't the trees. It was the rule. Every single person in the village followed it, without question. Never enter the forest after sunset. Not hunters. Not teenagers. Not even the drunk men who usually ignored every other rule in town. And when someone asked why, the answer was always the same. Because the forest walks at night. Most people who heard that laughed. Just like the 5 YouTubers did when they arrived in the village with their cameras, drones, and bright LED lights, ready to prove that the legend was nothing more than a scary story. They had no idea the villagers weren't trying to scare them. They were trying to warn them. And by the time the sun started going down, it was already too late. The YouTube channel was called Night Seekers. It wasn't huge, but it had a loyal audience, about 200,000 subscribers, who loved watching the group explore creepy places, abandoned hospitals, haunted houses, and forgotten tunnels. Their videos always followed the same formula: arrive at a mysterious location, listen to the local legends, and then spend the night proving that everything had a logical explanation. The team had 5 members. Alex, the channel's creator, was the one always speaking to the camera. Confident, sarcastic, and obsessed with proving that ghosts didn't exist. Maya handled the filming. She rarely appeared on camera, but she captured everything. Dima was the tech guy. Drones, microphones, night vision cameras. If it had batteries, he understood it. Lena researched local legends and told the stories that made each episode interesting. And finally, there was Kirill, the skeptic of skeptics. If something strange happened, he was always the first to say it was fake. When they arrived in Verkhney Dub, they expected the same routine. They parked their van near the village store and started filming immediately. Alex faced the camera with his usual grin. Alright guys, today we're in one of the smallest villages we've ever visited, and apparently there's a forest here that locals refuse to enter after sunset. He turned the camera toward the tree line in the distance. Even in daylight, the forest looked darker than the surrounding fields. Lena stepped into frame, holding her notebook. The legend says that once the sun goes down, the forest changes. People claim the paths move, and something inside the trees starts following you. Kirill laughed. Or maybe people just get lost in the dark. The team chuckled. To them, it was just another story. But the old man sitting near the store entrance wasn't laughing. He had been watching them quietly the entire time. Finally, he stood up and slowly walked toward the group. His voice was calm, but serious. You shouldn't go there tonight. The camera kept rolling as Alex smiled politely. Why not? The old man looked toward the forest. And after a long pause, he said something that made the entire group fall silent. Because after sunset, the forest is no longer the same place. The camera zoomed slightly as Alex turned back to the old man. All right, he said with a half smile. Now that sounds interesting. Lena immediately leaned forward, clearly excited. Wait, can you tell us what you mean by that? The old man hesitated. His face was weathered, and deep lines ran across his forehead like cracks in old wood. For a moment, it looked like he might simply walk away. But then he spoke. Many years ago, he said quietly, people used to go into that forest all the time. Hunters, woodcutters, children looking for berries. He slowly pointed toward the dark wall of trees at the edge of the fields. But sometimes, they didn't come back. Kirill crossed his arms. People get lost in forests all the time, he said, especially big ones. The old man shook his head. No. He looked directly at the camera. They didn't get lost. The group went silent for a moment. Maya kept filming. What happened to them then? Lena asked. The old man took a deep breath. They came back wrong. A light breeze moved through the village street, and somewhere behind them a loose metal sign creaked. Alex raised an eyebrow. Wrong how? The old man didn't answer immediately. Instead, he told them a story about a hunter who disappeared in the forest for 2 days. When he returned, he couldn't explain where he had been. He said the trees looked different, the paths twisted in ways they never had before. And sometimes, when he walked, he heard footsteps behind him. But every time he turned around, there was nothing there. For weeks after that, the hunter refused to leave his house after sunset. Then, one night, he vanished again. This time, he was standing at the edge of the forest. Villagers saw him there, just standing, looking into the trees, and slowly walking inside. No one ever saw him again. Kirill scoffed. Okay, that's definitely a horror story. Alex turned back to the camera. Well guys, it looks like we've found tonight's filming location. The old man suddenly grabbed Alex's arm. Hard. His eyes were wide now. Listen to me, he said. During the day, the forest is just trees. He pointed toward the horizon, where the sun was slowly sinking. But when the sun disappears, his voice dropped to almost a whisper. Something inside wakes up. For a moment, nobody said anything. The old man's grip on Alex's arm was surprisingly strong. His fingers trembled slightly, but his eyes were completely serious. Alex gently pulled his arm away. I appreciate the warning, he said, trying to stay polite, but we do this kind of thing all the time. Kirill nodded. Yeah, we've spent nights in abandoned hospitals, underground tunnels, cemeteries. Nothing ever happens. The old man looked at them one by one. You think this is the same? It wasn't a question. Then he slowly shook his head. This forest is older than this village. Older than the road you came here on. My grandfather told me the same rule when I was a child. He pointed again toward the trees. Never go there after sunset. Lena glanced at Alex. That actually sounds perfect for the video, she whispered. The viewers will love it. Dima checked the time on his phone. We've got about an hour before dark. Alex smiled at the camera again. All right, guys, here's the plan. We'll go into the forest before sunset, set up our cameras, and stay there all night. If this legend is real, we'll find out. Maya slowly turned the camera toward the forest. From this distance, it already looked strange. The trees were packed tightly together, forming a thick, almost solid wall of dark trunks and branches, even though the sky above the fields was still bright. The inside of the forest looked shadowy, like the light didn't quite reach the ground. The old man spoke again, his voice lower now. If you hear something calling you from the trees, everyone turned toward him. Do not follow it. Kirill laughed. Relax, we're not in a fairy tale. But the old man wasn't finished. And if the forest becomes quiet? He paused. Run! Alex clapped his hands once. All right, that's definitely the creepiest advice we've gotten so far. The team grabbed their gear from the van, backpacks, cameras, microphones, and 2 powerful flashlights. As they started walking toward the forest trail, Maya kept filming. Behind them, the old man stood in the middle of the road, watching. He didn't wave. He didn't move. And just before the group disappeared between the first trees, the sun touched the horizon, evergreen tree. The moment they stepped into the forest, the air felt different. It was cooler. Not the normal cool shade you feel under trees, but a damp, heavy cold that seemed to cling to the skin. Maya's camera light cut through the shadows as the group walked deeper along the narrow dirt path. Behind them, the bright fields of the village quickly disappeared. Okay, that's actually darker than I expected, Dima said, adjusting the strap of his backpack. Alex turned to the camera again. Right now we're about 50 meters inside the forest. The sun is still up, but as you can see, he pointed behind him. The path they had just walked looked strangely dim, The trees were thick, their branches tangled high above like a ceiling made of wood and leaves. Almost no sunlight reached the ground. Lena walked slowly beside Maya. "You know what's weird?" she said quietly. "What?" Maya asked. "There are almost no sounds." Kirill snorted. "It's a forest." "Exactly," Lena replied. "Forests have birds, insects, something." They all paused. For a few seconds, everyone listened. The silence was uncomfortable. No birds. No wind moving the branches. Nothing except their own footsteps crunching softly on dry leaves. Alex forced a smile. Maybe the animals just avoid people. Dima stopped walking and pulled out a small device. "Hold on." "What is that?" Alex asked. "Environmental recorder," Dima said. "It measures background noise." He looked at the small screen. Then frowned. "That's strange." "What?" "The sound level is extremely low, like almost nothing." Kirill shrugged. "Great, perfect place for a horror video then." They continued walking deeper into the forest. After about 10 minutes, the path split into two directions. One trail curved to the left. The other went straight into even thicker trees. Alex pointed his flashlight forward. "Let's go deeper." Lena looked back the way they came. Something about the path behind them felt wrong. It looked narrower than before, almost like the trees had moved closer together. She quickly shook the thought away and followed the others. None of them noticed something strange. The small trail they had entered from was no longer visible behind them, and far above, hidden between the branches, something moved, evergreen tree-eye. They walked for another 15 minutes before deciding to stop. Alex turned to Maya. "All right, this is probably deep enough. Let's set up here." The clearing wasn't very big, just a small open space where the trees grew slightly farther apart. The ground was uneven, covered with fallen branches and thick moss. Dima immediately started unpacking equipment. 2 night vision cameras, a motion sensor, and a small drone. "If anything moves around us tonight," he said confidently, "we'll see it." Kirill dropped his backpack and stretched his arms. "So the plan is just sit here until morning?" "Basically," Alex said. "We record, we talk about the legend, and if something weird happens, great content." Lena sat on a fallen log and looked around. Even with the flashlight beams, the forest felt darker now. The sun had almost completely disappeared. The sky above the trees had turned deep orange, then slowly faded into gray. Maya checked the camera battery. "Recording." Alex faced the lens again. "All right, guys, quick update. We're about 30 minutes inside the forest. Sunset just happened, so technically the legend says this is when things should start getting strange." Kirill waved his hand dramatically. "Ooh, scary forest spirits." Dima chuckled while adjusting the motion sensor on a nearby tree. "If something walks within 10 meters, this thing will beep." "Perfect," Alex said. For a while, everything was normal. The group talked. They joked. Lena told more local stories she had found online. Time passed slowly. Then something happened. It started with a sound. Very quiet. Almost too quiet to notice. A single crunch somewhere in the trees. Everyone froze. "Did you hear that?" Maya whispered. Kirill looked around. "Probably an animal." Another crunch. This time from a different direction. Dima frowned. "That's weird." "What?" Alex asked. Dima pointed at the motion sensor. It didn't detect anything. Another sound echoed through the trees. Crunch. Crunch. Like footsteps moving slowly through dry leaves, circling them. Lena's voice dropped to a whisper. "Guys!" "What?" She pointed into the darkness between the trees. "I think someone is walking out there." Alex lifted the flashlight and aimed it toward the direction she was pointing. The beam cut through the darkness. Empty trees. No movement. No animals. Nothing. Then, suddenly, Beep! Everyone jumped. The motion sensor had activated. But the device was pointing in the opposite direction, directly behind them. Slowly. Very slowly. All 5 of them turned around. Evergreen tree footprint. The flashlight beam moved slowly across the trees behind them. For a moment, nothing was there. Just trunks, branches, shadows stretching across the ground. Kirill exhaled and shook his head. Probably a deer. But Dima was staring at the motion sensor in his hand. It detected something at 7 meters. Alex aimed the flashlight deeper between the trees. 7 meters isn't far. If something's there, we should see it. Maya zoomed the camera toward the darkness. The forest remained completely still. Then Lena spoke quietly. Wait. Everyone looked at her. What? Alex asked. I heard footsteps again. They all held their breath. At first, there was only silence. Then, crunch. The sound came from the right side this time. Kirill turned his flashlight quickly. Nothing. But then another crunch echoed from behind them. Dima's voice sounded tense now. Okay, that's not one animal. Alex frowned. What do you mean? The steps are coming from different directions. Another crunch. Closer. Maya whispered behind the camera. It sounds like something is walking around us. The group slowly turned in a circle, shining their lights into the trees. Everywhere the beams touched, there was only empty forest. No movement. No glowing animal eyes. Nothing. And yet the footsteps continued. Crunch. Pause. Crunch. Like something pacing in the darkness. Then suddenly, the forest went completely silent. Even their breathing sounded loud. Lena's eyes widened. Do you remember what the old man said? Alex looked at her. What? Her voice was barely audible. If the forest becomes quiet. Nobody finished the sentence. At that exact moment, Dima's drone, sitting on the ground beside his bag, suddenly powered on by itself. The propellers started spinning. Lights blinking. Everyone jumped. I didn't touch it, Dima said quickly. The drone lifted a few centimeters into the air, then hovered. But it wasn't flying randomly. It slowly turned, as if pointing its camera at something. Something behind the trees. Alex followed the direction of the drone's camera with his flashlight, and for a split second, he thought he saw a silhouette. A tall shape, standing perfectly still between the trunks, watching them. Then the flashlight flickered, and the shape was gone. Evergreen tree eye. Alex lowered the flashlight slightly. Did anyone else see that? He asked. No one answered immediately. Maya slowly moved the camera toward the same spot between the trees. What exactly did you see? She whispered. A person, Alex said. I think. Kirill frowned. That's impossible. No one followed us. Dima grabbed the drone controller, trying to stabilize it. I swear, I didn't turn this thing on. But the drone ignored his commands. It hovered silently about 2 meters above the ground, slowly rotating in the air like it was searching for something. Then it suddenly moved forward. Straight into the trees. Hey! Dima shouted. The group hurried after it, pushing through branches and dry leaves. Careful, Lena said. We're leaving the clearing. But the drone kept flying. Its small lights flickered through the darkness ahead of them. After about 20 meters, it suddenly stopped. Hovering. Perfectly still. Alex raised his flashlight again. All right, if someone's out here, this isn't funny. The beam of light reached the drone. And the ground beneath it. Lena gasped quietly. What is that? On the forest floor were footprints. But something about them looked wrong. They were human footprints. Bare feet. Pressed deeply into the soft soil. But there was a problem. The prints were facing toward the group. And they stopped directly under the hovering drone. As if someone had walked there, and then simply vanished. Kirill crouched down to look closer. That's not possible. The soil was disturbed where the prints ended. But there were no tracks leading away. No signs of someone turning around. Nothing. Just the final footprint. Right beneath the drone. Maya zoomed the camera down. "Guys!" Her voice trembled slightly. "Those prints look fresh." A cold wind suddenly moved through the trees. The branches above them rustled loudly for the first time since they entered the forest. Then, from somewhere deep in the darkness, a voice echoed softly. Not loud, not clear, but unmistakable. It sounded like someone whispering, calling a name. "Alex." Everyone froze. Alex's face went pale. "Okay, that's not funny." But the whisper came again. Closer now. "Alex." Lena slowly shook her head. "Don't answer it." Another whisper drifted through the forest. This time it sounded almost identical to Alex's own voice. Nobody moved. The forest felt colder now, like the temperature had suddenly dropped several degrees. Alex stared into the darkness between the trees. "That sounded like me," he said quietly. Kirill shook his head immediately. "No, that's someone messing with us." But even he didn't sound convinced. The whisper came again. "Alex." This time it came from deeper in the forest, somewhere ahead of them. Almost like someone was standing just beyond the reach of their flashlights. Dima tightened his grip on the drone controller. "We should go back to the clearing." For the first time since entering the forest, Alex nodded without arguing. "Yeah, let's regroup." They turned around and started walking back the way they came. Or at least, the way they thought they came. Maya kept the camera pointed forward while they moved through the trees. Branches scraped softly against their jackets. Leaves crunched under their feet. After about a minute, Carol suddenly stopped. "Wait!" Everyone bumped into each other as they halted. "What?" Alex asked. Carol slowly turned around. "The clearing should be right there." He pointed behind them. But there was no clearing. Only trees. Dense. Dark. Endless. Lena's voice shook slightly. "That's not possible." "We walked straight," Tima said. They turned their flashlights in every direction. The forest looked exactly the same everywhere. Tall trunks. Black shadows. No open space. No equipment. No path. "Did we go the wrong way?" Maya asked. Alex shook his head slowly. "No." The clearing was only like 20 meters away. Silence fell over the group again. Then Lena whispered something none of them wanted to hear. "Remember what the old man said?" No one answered. Her voice dropped even lower. "He said the paths move." Suddenly the whisper returned. But this time it came from behind them. Very close. So close it sounded like someone was standing right next to Alex. "Why are you leaving?" Alex spun around and pointed the flashlight behind him. For one brief second, the light revealed a tall figure standing between two trees. Long arms. A shape that almost looked human. But the proportions were wrong. Too tall. Too thin. And its head tilted slowly to the side. Like it was curious. Then the flashlight flickered. Darkness swallowed the trees again. And when the light returned, the figure was gone. But the footsteps started again. This time, running toward them, evergreen tree eye. Panic erupted instantly. "Run!" Alex shouted, and the group bolted. Branches whipped against their faces, leaves and dirt flew under their feet. Every direction looked the same. The forest had swallowed the path. The clearing was nowhere in sight. Behind them, the footsteps multiplied. Not slow, not careful. They pounded, echoing through the trees, faster than any human could run. Crunch, crunch, crunch. Lena screamed when something brushed past her shoulder. She stumbled, but Alex grabbed her arm and pulled her forward. Maya's camera bounced violently as she ran, capturing only glimpses of shadowy shapes twisting between the trunks. Dima yelled, "This way!" and turned left, trying to remember the trail. But each turn felt wrong. Every tree looked identical to the last. Every shadow seemed to move independently. Then, Alex noticed something on the ground. The footprints. They weren't human. Long, uneven, some too large for a man. They appeared in front of them, as if guiding. or chasing, they led deeper into the forest. The whispers returned, soft, persistent, their own voices, distorted, calling their names. Alex. Lena. Dima. The voices came from all directions. The forest seemed alive. The air grew thick, suffocating, and the shadows began to shift unnaturally, stretching across the ground, creeping toward them. Suddenly, the drone flew overhead again, illuminating the figure from earlier. It was taller, impossibly thin, with limbs that bent in unnatural ways. Its head tilted slowly, staring. It moved without sound, gliding between the trees, always ahead but never coming closer, until it did. Alex stumbled. He tripped over a root. He turned. The figure loomed above him. It was close enough that he could see its pale, almost translucent skin, the darkness where its eyes should have been. He screamed. The camera fell to the ground. Maya tried to pick it up, but more figures had appeared, shadows taller than men, gliding, circling, whispering. And then the forest swallowed them. When the villagers searched the next day, they found only the camera. It was still recording, the memory card intact. On the footage, the last thing visible before the camera fell to the forest floor was the clearing, and it wasn't empty. A dozen tall, shadowy figures stood silently among the trees, watching, waiting. And behind them, deeper in the darkness, the forest seemed to breathe. No one has entered that forest after sunset since. Because some legends aren't stories. Some are warnings. Evergreen Tree Eye,